Yeah, hell yeah. That's good.
Murder, but with vibes.
So do me in the murder game.
Please take my crippling debt.
Just shooting everybody. Sorry you died. Sorry you can't get good. Hi, I'm Gabe.
And I'm Kat.
And we're the Ghouls Next Door. Talking about spooky stuff.
Yeah, spooky sadness.
Yeah, sadness. For people who don't know, we're the media literacy show that explores the real life, historic, and psychological reasonings behind our cinematic fears. And we are starting a new series. We're all done with our
musicals.
It was a long time. We did a lot of them.
Yeah.
And now we're doing games. We're doing murder games.
Specifically, yeah. It's not a game without the murder.
Because then it would just be a regular. Like, that's not horror. That's not our show.
Yeah.
It's just regular.
High stakes.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about that. And yeah, we're starting it off with Squid Game, which everyone's been hype about. Yeah, I hope that people enjoy the show. It's super fun. It is very gory and very sad.
Yeah, it mostly made me feel sad.
Yeah.
I'd say, like, even the parts that were fun, by the time we got to the end, I was like, oh, no, it's just sad. It's just sad. And I mean, that's what capitalism is, so I guess.
Yeah.
Here we are.
I have a confession to make.
Okay.
To everyone out there, and to you, Kat, you already know.
I do. Okay.
Am a Koreaboo.
Oh, yes. Okay. I was like, what are you saying? Yeah, I was like, I'm not ready. Like, are you? Oh, that'd be spoilery. I can't say that. Never mind.
Yeah, this whole time it was me. No,
You made me love you, and then you betrayed me.
Yeah. I am a very big Korean fan, so I'm very excited that people will be watching Squid Game, and I'm hoping that it'll influence them to watch other stuff.
Yeah, watch all the other things that are great.
Yeah, like if you need a recommendation for any type, let me know. It's a lot. I do a lot of different Korean things, like South Korean media of all kinds, all forms, all mediums. So I was very excited. I was hooked immediately when I saw it. And so I hope people like it. And we're trying to have fun. But we are media literacy, so we're also going to talk about some other things. So just be prepared.
Yeah. My section's what it usually is, which is sad.
Yeah.
It's like, remember capitalism and crippling debt and like no foreseeable way out of that? Mm-hmm. Yep. That's what we're doing.
Now imagine if you had to murder to get out of it. It's like,
it doesn't seem very far off. For real.
Yeah.
It seems pretty plausible. Or I could just easily see some rich detached person being like, you know what'd be cool? Let's give an opportunity to all these people who we don't see them as people, so it's a fun game for us.
Yeah.
Let's just do that. Make it a fun, elitist, disgusting time.
And I mean, that's the crux of most murder games is rich people messing with poor people.
Yeah.
The lower class people.
Exploitation.
Yeah, it goes without saying. I think that's going to come up a lot in this series because it always comes down to rich people being bored because they don't have to struggle like the rest of us and find joy in like the sunset or just like not having to work that day, you know, like they're sad, so they make people murder.
It's just really wild to me, the argument that you do not have to worry about surviving financially, so you no longer enjoy life. That does not make sense to me, because now you have time to do things that would allow you to enjoy life. Like, I don't understand why having a bunch of money makes you not enjoy the sunset anymore. You can't buy the sun. Like, why does money influence that? It just really seems really bizarre to me. And I don't understand.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel what you're saying.
Like, I feel like it sends a message that, like, everyone's miserable, humanity is trash, and we all just sad. It just, like, sends a message that, like, there's no solution. Like, that it's better to not be able to afford shit. Sorry, cursing. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand what the argument is supposed to be, or why they no longer are able to enjoy things just because they have lots of money. It's like, then just like be, man. That's what meditation is for.
Yeah.
And self, like inner looking at yourself. You know what I mean? Figuring out who you are as a person.
But I think it's also like you feel like you're better than them because like you wouldn't. You're not going to kill people for money, but it's because you have a lot of it. You don't know what it means to not. So, and then there's also just like when you have that much money, you've been exploiting people anyway. So this doesn't seem like that big of a stretch. Like you clearly already don't care about people in order to get to that state, that part
like
of
they're
wealth.
So detached from what it is to be a person at that point. Okay, I get it from that angle. I guess it's just more so it's like, is that what people think the goal is? To be that rich that you can do that to other people.
Only find joy in murder.
Yeah, I think that's more so where I was like, there's a disconnect for me, and I don't get it. I feel like, but I guess that's under the assumption that they were never at any point within a space where they felt they were just human.
Yeah.
With I guess that lens, it is different.
Yeah, and it's also interesting. I don't have it in my part, but the elite in this are American.
Yeah.
White people. And they're like, I saw some articles about them getting like, just like harassed because their acting is pretty bad. But I'd argue that the writing for them was not great. And like the way that they were recorded was weird too. And I think that was intentional because there are times where like there's this like two characters who always say something after like one person. And they would like, it seemed like it was supposed to be a joke, but it didn't quite hit. Yeah. So yeah, I thought it was very interesting because I was like, it's meta because it's primarily American audiences who are watching and enjoying this show about like how sad and awful the conditions are in South Korea for people who don't have money. And we're like, ha ha ha, look at those ridiculous rich elite
jerks. It's like, no, that's actually like what is here.
It's like, this is you. Like, that is you watching those. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it.
A bit, yeah.
Let me go. So, we watched Squid Game, which I've been saying Squid Games until I was writing the script, and I was like, same thing with Alice in Borderland. It's just Borderland. Yeah. It's not lands, but the game is Borderlands, so that's where my brain goes. Anyway, what is Squid Game about? Hundreds of cash-strapped players accept a strange invitation to compete in children's games. Fun. Inside, a tempting prize awaits with deadly high stakes. Survival game that has a whopping 45.6 billion won prize at stake, and it is directed by Hwang Dong-hyuk. Yes. I didn't do the currency for won, but it's a lot. And I know a lot of people looked it up and were like, how much is this? Because it sounds like a lot because they use, like, it's like so many more. Like, when I first started reading or like watching like K-dramas and stuff, and they would like mention how much won, I was like, how much is that really? Because I don't know. It seems like a lot. And then it'd be like $20. But it's like 20,000 won. And I'm like, wait a second. That's That's a lot. You just got carrying around. Anyway, I know that was just like a thing people had. So, murder games, right? That's what we're covering, and that's what Squid Game is, and people are going nuts for it, and I totally understand. Murder games are fun. There are people who see this as being one of the best shows about murder games. I would say those people probably haven't seen anime, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Just because, like, there's a lot. Or just, like, hopefully this means they'll watch more. You're definitely allowed to enjoy things, but maybe watch more things before you say this is the best. Because it's great, but I don't know. We're going to be revisiting some things, so we'll see. I am a huge fan of South Korean media, and I can't wait until I can figure out a way to wiggle in Kingdom onto the Ghouls. It's like zombies and classism, and just sign me up. And it's also really amazing storytelling and great zombies. Like, the lore is great. So I get genuinely excited when we cover critical media, like by like Bong Joon-ho, right? That is making statements. But I also get really excited about K-dramas. So I'm very much Koreaboo, like I said. When I first saw the trailer on Netflix for Squid Game, I was like, what is this strange and playful but definitely murderous show? Like, I was like, this is like, it's so bright and colorful, but it's also very eerie and uncomfortable. I like watched the whole trailer and then immediately put it on my list, and I was like, I gotta watch this. And then my younger sister was like, you really need to watch it. And she said it had more twists than a road in Tennessee, which I'm sure means something. And so I binged it so that I could talk to her about it. But I'm just a sucker for murder games and series or films in general. And for people who don't know what that kind of like subgenre film is, it's essentially like a series of film in which normal folks, sometimes children, like in Battle Royale, have to fight to the death for some reason. A good deal of the characters in these shows and films fight simply to survive. There was a few, sometimes it's like a psychological experiment. There was like the one recently in America where they were like in a company, and it was like every hour you got to kill somebody or we're going to kill someone. So then they had to make the choice of who was going to die. So it's always like people are just trying to survive, and the result in that is that you sometimes have to kill people, or you got to get rid of the weakest link or what have you. It's just a matter of like, someone has to die and it's not going to be me, right? And that's usually why they end up killing. There's going to be alliances made and then broken really dramatically. There's going to be really gory deaths and also really sad deaths, because of course you're going to fall and care for the characters even though you know they're going to die. Other murder games that director Hwang Dong-hyuk could have been inspired by are Battle Royale, which features a bunch of school kids killing each other just to survive, which people say was inspired or had inspired Hunger Games.
Okay.
And I agree because it came first. So Hunger Games could be very well influenced by that. And then I recommend that if you like Hunger Games. It's way more gory and less like romance driven, but it exists. And then also there's As the Gods Will by Takashi Miike, who we covered on our show with a special episode just about him. And we had found the absurd film Happiness of the Katakuris, and God's Will is very much like that in that it's absurd, it's kind of goofy. It also has children's. It's very close because it's children's games that are monstrosized, but it's more fantastical. Whereas this is like people doing it, right? Like, and it's kind of fantastical in the fact that like who's creating these games and how do they have this island that's secret, whatever. But in Miike's thing, it's like, it's silly. It's very silly. And if you have just take the time and watch the trailer. I promise you will not be disappointed because it's super funny and I want to watch it now. We won't cover it because it's a little too similar to this. But people have been, referencing all kinds of murder games and saying that the director, Dong Hyuk, stole these ideas from the films or series. But I mean, murder game plots are free. there are a lot of them, and the thread is there, and I get it. But they're all going to be similar in some way, but they're their own thing. No one has owns the rights to murder game prompt.
Yeah.
Oh my god, words. And so this is the first one we're going to talk about, but obviously not the last, because there's going to be an entire series about murder games. So we'll tell you all about them. So later, in this month, we'll be covering Alice in Borderland, which is truly terrifying to me because you have to win by being smart.
Yeah.
And figuring out these puzzles under pressure. And there's many of these murder games where the plot is logic based games, and I just tap out. I'm no, I'm not gonna be able to solve this under pressure. I am not that bright. It's not gonna I get it if it's me versus somebody and it's you gotta fight to survive, sure, but I gotta solve this puzzle. That's not happening. So, in an article on Variety titled "Squid Game Director Not Hurrying to Capitalize on Global Success" by Patrick Frater, Director Huang said, "I freely admit that I've had great inspiration from Japanese comics and animation over the years. When I started, I was in financial straits myself and spent much time in cafes reading comics including Battle Royale and Liar Game. I came to wonder how I'd feel if I took part in the games myself, but I found the games too complex, and for my own work, focused instead on using kids' games." So that's where he kind of got this idea of murderous kid games. Could also be he watched me care. All right, so thankfully we're met with childhood games warped into murderous challenges of wit, endurance, and sanity, and just humanity as well. There's team efforts, and if you're a good person or not, and when it comes down to it, is it me or is it you? It's gonna be me. Kind of mentality, obviously.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that because I was I can play red light, green light. I don't know about tug of war. I guess if I learned the things they did, cool. But just tug of war by myself, that's not happening. The show starts out with the sad and deplorable Seong Ki-hun, who spends all of his money, which was originally intended to buy his daughter a birthday gift.
Yeah.
So right out the gate here, to get more money. He's gambling. He's paying horses, doing horse gambling. I never really understood this, but I don't know enough about horses to be that one's gonna win. But we see Gi-hun at his lowest, and he's not really a likely hero or protagonist at all.
Yeah.
In murder games, the characters are often motivated by the need to survive the games themselves. But sometimes the motivation is money, just flat out. And that is the case with Squid Game. And this results in an incredibly heavy societal critique that Kat is going to go into in her section, because it becomes more of just what would a person do to survive, and more of what would a person do for money, which is a different conversation. And so then it kind of turns it into a bit more of that, more than the typical rich elite are doing anything for or are bored narrative, and more into people will do anything for money kind of narrative, and they're trying to confirm that or feel better about themselves because they're see, these people are so low that they would do anything, including murdering their friends. And so it's one thing if you just need to survive, because people do anything to survive, including killing other people. But when the motivation evolves out of simply surviving into cunning and strategy to inherit wealth, no matter what, it becomes a bit more sinister. Kind of what was it, the Ready or Not kind of thing, right? Those rich elite people, they were also killing for money, right? At that point, it's literally anyone. It doesn't even matter if you don't have any money. Hyung said in that variety interview as well. I wanted to write a story that was an allegory or fable about modern capitalist society, something that depicts an extreme competition, somewhat like the extreme competition of life. But I wanted it to use the kind of characters we've all met in real life. As a survival game, it is entertainment and human drama. The games are portrayed as extremely simple and easy to understand. That allows viewers to focus on the characters rather than being distracted by trying to interpret the rules. Which is true, because I'd say, like, part of the fun in some of the murder games is, like, you're trying to be like, could I solve this? Could I figure it out?
Yeah.
And in, like, Alice in Borderland, it's like, could I? Probably not. But when you're, like, facing, like, these are people we're caring about, and they're just kind of hopeless and sad anyway, it kind of changes what your whole thing is. So I'm going to dabble a little bit into capitalism and Squid Game, but not anywhere near what Kat is doing. I'm mostly just talking about why this show stands out from other murder games in its representation of it. So we're going to enter Spoiler Town.
Yes.
So go watch it. You're not gonna want to stop. You want to get through it. It's gonna be really hard, but we're here for you. So go watch it, then come back. So, what set this show apart from the other murder games shows was, for me, the second episode. That's it. In the second episode, the characters find a way out in the rules that they've agreed to, and that if the majority of players agree to end the game, then it ends. And this is like after the surprising reveal that they're in murder games, and not a fun game of red light, green light, or in Korean, it was the hibiscus flowers bloomed. So everyone is like shaken, and they watch people just be murdered in front of them, just shot in front of them. They almost were shot. Like, you just barely survived. And then someone's like, you can leave, if everyone agrees, or most of you agree. So then the characters beg to be released, and they, explain they have families. Someone's like, I haven't named my baby yet. Maybe that's real, maybe it's not. And that they have this life outside of the game they want to return to. So they have this really intense vote where they have to decide if they want to stay and get the money from the people who, like, if they play and they win, the money is split up to the winners. And if they all quit, they go back to their lives, whatever, but the money that was gained so far from the people who died will go to the families of the players that died. So they get nothing. Yeah. Right? And what's more, the votes aren't anonymous. You have to walk in front of everyone and choose money or freedom. And it sets the tone immediately. But what got to me the most in this whole section, like in that whole episode, was just that they got out. That the majority, barely, voted to leave. And so everyone returns home. And that's where the true message behind the series comes through, because all the characters that we learn to care for are suffering. Every one of them has strong motivations for being in a murder game that could give them money, like more money than they've ever imagined, and could solve all of their problems. Yeah. And the fact that they have problems where these rich people don't. So they're not just like money hungry people. They're desperate and they're dying. Like, there are things actively in their life that are causing them harm. And if they don't have money, they're going to be dead anyway. Gi-hun, who is our main character, he's super goofy. He's no one. He's a nothing. He's a gambling addict. He's a terrible father and son. He has a really good heart, but he's kind of dull, like witted, and is just, I mean, he just never caught a break. And he just keeps doing it because he thinks that's the way. It's just slippery slope. And so he's just kind of living with that. Then there's, I'm trying to find a good picture of him because people like hate on him. Cho Sang-woo, who's a childhood friend of Gi-hun, who made it after getting into Seoul National University and becoming supposedly successful. But he resorts to attempting to commit suicide because he can't keep up with the debts incurred from funnily enough, similarly to Gihan, was spending money to make money. Right?
Yeah.
He just had more money to spend, and he was doing it white collar instead of this like blue collar way that Gihan was doing. I did read somewhere that people missed that he was committing suicide in the bathtub, but he was like in a full suit. He was in the bathtub. There was like the thing over there, like.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize that's what was happening either until you just said it right now.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Teaching. Yeah, I got it. I was like, oh, this is so sad. I was like, oh no.
I got that he was like upset or that like he was like fine with being dead, but I didn't realize he was in that moment attempting to unalive himself.
Yeah, he was gonna unalive himself. Yes. Thank you. It's super sad, but it's also like he really didn't have any other things. It's a part of it is that he was out of money and there's debts to be paid, but it's also a pride thing as well because he was seen as someone who made it. His mom like is gloating about him all the time, and if he fails, like it means more than just like, oh, you ran out of money, you're gonna go to jail kind of thing. It's like you ruined everything. Like you ruined your whole reputation and what people think of you, which is it's a very big thing, especially in South Korea, and that's something like you see even in Parasite, right? Like that need to be respected is super strong. There's also Kang Se-byuk, who is everyone's favorite character, who is a North Korean refugee who has lost her father. He died. Her mother is trapped in China, which is the route you have to go through to get out of North Korea. And her younger brother is in an orphanage waiting for her and their mother. So she is trying hard. I'm going to go over like translation things and things you might miss out if you're not familiar with certain Korean culture things. But it is to note that Se-byuk has a North Korean accent that she tries to mask when she's around other characters, which is like, if you don't know that, you wouldn't understand like how, like it's kind of like she's swapping so that she can fit in, and just adds
code
to
switching.
Like, her whole adds her whole character for sure. Then there's Ali Abdul, who's everyone's other favorite character and best boy, and everyone should have a crush on. Look at this cute face.
He's very cute.
He's an immigrant with a new baby who needs money to protect his family. So everyone is sad and broken. They're perfect victims for murder games organized by the rich elite. That's it. Yeah. So they get out and then they get back in. And that was what got me, was the fact that they like, everyone chose to leave, or the majority of them chose to leave, and then so many of them chose to come back. Like there's a few of them that didn't, but it's like that, like other games, other murder game shows or films, people are just dropped in there and it's like, this is your only choice. And if you could leave, then you would just go, right? This is how important it is. Like this is how desperate they are, that they return to a game they know will murder them. Like that. Yeah. It's absurd. And so I think like that in itself, just that one episode and just that turn totally changed the entire outlook of it for me, because I was like, whoa, like that's crazy. Let me get into this because now I'm like, I got a lot to say. And even still, not as much as I wanted to say. The show is really fun and gory, and it plays well with suspense. In the tug-of-war episode, we're stressed and lured into this false sense of security by the success of our favorite characters. Because they put them all together, it seemed hopeless, and then it worked out, and it sets up the viewers to be as vulnerable as possible in the next episode with marbles, which means you're like on equal footing, the same ground as the characters, who were also just as vulnerable. And so you're being led through these games. You are also victim to whatever the game masters decide as a viewer. And it's just like this beautiful system that really plays with our relentless desire to hope. Especially in American media, the good guy usually wins. So we feel like in the end, it's got to work out, right? Like our friends got to come to, like, they're gonna make it. Everyone is so nice, and they saved each other a little bit. They're working it out. So this is, gonna work out. But it is a murder game show, friends, so it's not. We can only have one winner. It's not explicitly stated, but there can only be one winner, which means everybody else has to die. So all the people you love and care for are gonna die. Sorry. I'm gonna shift over a little bit because I want to talk about some other things that are not specifically plot related, but integral to the understanding and appreciation of the impact of the series. And one thought is like the fascination with Squid Game by South Koreans reminds me of people's misguided obsession with The Great Gatsby. Where like people get all glamored and glitz to party Gatsby style and they completely miss the point, although sloppy. That's a commentary on upper class society and the problems with it. And people are like, we're gonna party like we're rich. And I'm like, you're missing it. And so like it's kind of similar where like it's very popular in American media because like it's another place that has that kind of problem. So we think that's great. But it's only popular in South Korea because it's popular in America and they're being represented in America. So they like that. And so there's like everyone who's dressing up. Like Squid Game. It's like you're missing the point of what it is. Anyway, and I'm going to go into some stuff. And whatever, call me a killjoy, I don't care. In an article on Al Jazeera titled "Why Some Korean Women Are Boycotting Squid Game" by Gabe, they interview a Korean woman who was very disappointed in the series' portrayal of women. Hyunjin Min, a film studies major at Yonsei University in Seoul, in the article mentions how Squid Game shows the shameful side of Korean society, but the sense of pride is way bigger than the sense of embarrassment. And the more interest international audience expresses in Squid Games, the more pride South Koreans feel. Like the movie Parasite before it and the song Gangnam Style before that, neither of which were immediately smash hits in South Korea, according to Min, it is actually this attention abroad that makes Squid Game so popular at home. Now given its pop culture super status, feminist boycotters say their voices seem to be especially unwelcome. Rather than be acknowledged, they say they are dismissed as killjoys who would rather rain on the national parade than simply be happy for their country's success.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like, who's getting success from this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who's benefiting from it ultimately being successful? Like, the pride is one element to it, but also it's like those problems still exist. The ones that have like that giant magnifying glass on them. It's like that is still very much the people who are struggling right now within the country aren't being acknowledged for that actual struggle instead of just like and like people are just enjoying this as like media that's fun. When it's actually like, no, but like there's horrible things happening societally that need to be addressed, and it's not killjoy time. It's literally like, this is what reality is made in a little fun box for you.
Yeah.
And you're just right over the head in terms of recognizing like how essential it is that those things need to change.
Yeah. That's what I was saying.
That's
like
my
the Great
interpretation.
Gatsby thing. It's like even thinking of like Parasite with like the spike in people who wanted to like eat ramyun. And it's like, that's because, but like, that's not the point of okay, you're essentially just like the couple that were like, had their fantasy about being on the subway because that was like so, exotic for them. By you, like, desiring to eat this ramyun, you're just like, ooh, like we can do it like them, like it's still this otherism and it's still like, you're missing the whole point of the whole thing.
It's like commodification when that shouldn't be the result of the highlight.
Yeah. It's like all the people who bought Clownfish after watching Finding Nemo and missing the point that like Finding Nemo didn't want to be in the fish tank.
Yeah. So like don't
film was
create
like, leave them
Nemos in your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So whole thing, right? So I totally get where the person's like these groups are coming from. And, I often feel that we at the Ghouls Next Door are called killjoys when we discuss things that are like issues in otherwise popular films. We've even gotten like comments that are like, it's just a film. It's like, that's not what media is. Media literacy, friend. And don't get me wrong, I love this show. And I really do want people to watch it and I want people to enjoy it. I had a lot of fun. And that happens a lot with a lot of the programs that we watch where we'll have a good time, but we still have our media analysis glasses on, and it would be wrong of us in our show not to critique some of the things because they're not perfect, right? And I would say the terrible use of femme presenting characters was not lost on me, even watching it. And many of the women characters, if not all of them, were tools for male characters, either to give them some depth and prove their compassion, like with Gihan and Sebiok, like the fact that he was taking care of her or caring for her at all. Like, that's the most he ever did for any character, besides like the old man, or to bring their demise after being scorned with like Han Minyo and Jang Deok-soo. He was like, that's a whole thing, which we'll get into. One of the examples in the Al Jazeera article is about Minyo, who is an incredibly misunderstood character in the American audiences for sure, because subtitles were off. But also, if you don't understand just the culture, you're going to miss some of the things that really make her character interesting. And Juhi Judy Han, an assistant professor of gender studies at the University of California in Los Angeles, said, "It is important that the debate surrounding Minyo extends beyond whether her representation is realistic to more broadly consider the questions she raises about what sexual empowerment means and how that could actually look in real life." It's one thing to say that Minyo is sexualized, but it's another question, and a complex question for feminists, to think about what sexuality means for women who are put in those precarious situations. At the crux of visibility, the visibility discussion, then, Han says, is questioning the agency of the characters, the vantage point of the story, and our own tendency as viewers to value and empathize with certain narratives more than others. It's only when we start disrupting that we can start to pay attention to the importance of the more marginalized characters. Minyo is kind of a badass in her own way, but is she a feminist heroine? I'm not sure. I just wish someone like her could have been the main character. And it makes sense to me. Like, I was like, that, like, there is she was so, like, people hate on her so bad, and it makes me mad. Because I'm like, everyone is trying to survive, and a lot of those men did way worse than she did. All she was annoying. And, like, anytime a woman is dubbed annoying, gets me up, because I'm like, I am annoying. So, and I understand, like, the anger that these women have about being represented in such a way, and considering how popular the series has been in America, and also thinking that this might be the only glimpse into Korean culture that Americans get, and furthermore, into Korean women, it can be harmful. Like, it just creates and then, like, confirms certain biases and misrepresentation about those women. And if that's all you're getting, like, this is the one that makes it out and people watch, now this is what they think of you. There's another quote. Lee, a 25-year-old student living outside of the South Korean capital Seoul, is part of the feminist group Hail, which means tsunami in Korean. Like Lee, some other members of Hail have joined the boycott of Squid Game in hopes that it will send a message to writer-director Don Hyuk-wang that women deserve better. For now, critical conversations have taken place on feminist forums as the boycotters say they avoided posting on wider platforms for fear of harassment in a country where feminists routinely face online vitriol. They want Hwang to treat women's stories with more sensitivity and complexity as he plans for season 2. It's like, we get it. He probably didn't even know it was going to be this successful, and now it is.
So, like, take that responsibility and use it well. Like, now that you know that it's this and it's bigger, intentionally seek out making that a better situation. Yeah. Because you did it already. You can't undo it now. Like, but you can do better in the future. That's like kind of like the human experience in and of itself. You were crappy yesterday. Yeah. But tomorrow you can be less crappy or even arguably uncrappy. You could just do good things. So
you can work to completely unravel what you had done, right? Like, you can put in that work. And decent representation is not too much to ask for. Like, they are not asking for everything to be shut down. They're just like, could we do better? And, like, considering the real harm that is happening for women in South Korea and that these groups are, like, addressing, creating media that reinforces or even creates those stereotypes about these women, it's simply another form of harm.
Yeah.
You know, and Huang has said he has no intention of a second season, or he's not rushing to it, like in that Variety article. But I do hope that he hears what these women are saying, and puts a bit more work into the women that he's creating in whatever it is that his next project is.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. So I'm getting there. My last little bit, and then I'm gonna pass it over, is about language and culture and mistranslations for American audiences, because you might have watched a different Squid Game than a Korean audience or someone who knows a little bit about Korean, right? So as mentioned Bev and a million times already, I'm a Koreaboo. And so I indulge in a lot of Korean media, whether that's manhwas, K-dramas, K-pop, K-R&B, films, series, whatever. Like all of it, all the time. And so in all that, I have become familiar with some of the cultural things, like, because I'm just very interested in that. I don't know any of those things, right? And it is very different from things that we have or do or say in America. So, for example, in Korea, there are words that you give to your friends that are akin to family. And they tend to be specifically related to age differences and how close you are to each other. And there's a lot of like, this also happens in like Japan, and I'm sure in other, just like America just don't got it. But there's a lot around like being polite, and there's like, you are polite with people, and then when you get closer to them, you might speak a little more casually. And it's just like, it's way more important over there than it is here. People just talk to each other like trash all the time. So so that was always very interesting to me. And in the show, there's a lot of instances of like, if you don't understand the culture or those words and the importance of them, then you might miss some of the more profound parts of those relationships. So in one of the most heartbreaking, or the most episodes, our best boy, Ali, sweet Ali Abdul, is betrayed by the villainous Sang-woo. Super sad. We all saw it coming, but it's still very sad. Or at least I saw it coming. I was like, there's no way, he's too pure. But the scene is even more heartbreaking when you learn that Sang-woo asked that Ali call him Hyung. And Hyung is what a younger man would call an older man affectionately. It's like big brother. And in the series, I think he calls him like bro or like brother, but you don't understand like how important that word is. But also on the other side is what he had been calling Sang-woo before that. And so in the subtitles, they mistranslated, I'm going to say all these words wrong because I do not speak Korean, I'm sorry, but Shangjungnim, they changed it to sir instead of boss. But if you understood that he was saying boss and you understood what that word meant, you would, one, understand that Ali is pure, but he's also foreign. So he's using a far too formal and inappropriate term. Like he doesn't quite he's using the wrong one. But it's also incredibly formal and like boss, right? And he also bows like really far. Like there's a lot of like, he's trying to be over polite to this man that he respects. Two, in this change, you understand that the relationship leaps and bounds from boss to brother, right? Like from you are like above me and this like person that I respect and, you know, I'll do whatever you want, to we are equals.
Yeah, and we're family.
We are friends, we're family, right? Like you mean something to me. And for that to happen right before the betrayal is like, but you're just like, oh, we called him bro, whatever. So the depth and meaning for that word on someone like Ali, who is a foreigner and the sweetest boy that has ever lived, makes it even harder to watch. And we kind of lose that in the mistranslations or just like not knowing about the culture. Another instance of the familial names being misused in subtitles was with Minyo, who continually gets a bad rap when it comes to subtitles in the show. But she calls the mobster Jang Deok-soo oppa. And this is a term used by younger women for older men. It's usually affectionately and also kind of brotherly, but could be like if you have an older boyfriend, like you might call him oppa. But it also could just be a friend, right? And this is in it, she calls him that, and they changed her subtitle to babe instead of like what it is.
For mine, it was old man.
Old man.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it changed to babe as it went. It was old man first.
Old man
and then it
babe.
translated later to babe.
So weird. Babe, I kind of understand because it's like, it's the right affection, but old man is the right, like, direct translation, I guess you would say. So
yeah,
I kind of get it. So when it was babe, it was confusing because Deok-soo asks her, how old are you? Because she's clearly an older woman, and Ope was used by younger girls and used affectionately. So it's like this is like her attempt to garner sympathy, and she wants to be seen as cute, and for them to want to protect her and to care for her. And so she's like, it's like this, like, oh, you're my, like, oh, I love you. Like this kind of, like, don't you think I'm adorable kind of thing? And so it's like her vulnerability in that. And if she's just like saying babe, it just kind of seems flirtatious. And that's not quite, like, she is flirtatious in a lot of ways, but it's not quite the desperation of like, see me as someone you want to protect.
Yeah.
And yeah, this woman really got to me, and everyone's hating on her, but she's trying to survive, and it's a murder game, and I'd be annoying too. Like,
yeah.
If you don't think I'm going to be trying to be everyone's friend and loud and be like, and she also has to work so hard for people to see the value in her because they immediately already have assumptions about who she is.
Yeah.
And so there's also this TikToker who went in over some of the issues. She did it on TikTok, and they also did it on Twitter. And their name is Youngmi Mayer, and they said, if you don't understand Korean, you didn't really watch the same show. Translation was so bad, the dialogue was written so well, and zero of it was preserved. The reason this happens is because translation work is not respected, and also the sheer volume of content. Translators are underpaid and overworked, and it's not their fault. It's the fault of producers who don't appreciate the art. I feel it. Youngmi has also done that work before, so they understood. And some of the translation issues were from Minyo's character, and if they were translated properly, they may have given American audiences a better, more informed view of her and why she was the way she was.
Yeah.
For example, at one point the subtitles read, I'm not a genius, but I can work it out. Whereas the actual Korean was, I'm very smart, I just didn't get a chance to study. And that's important because it's the entire purpose of the character and represents a trope of Korean culture. In that, like, she's street smart instead of being book smart, right?
Yeah.
And she never got the opportunity to grow to be book smart. And so she's intelligent and she's conniving and cunning. And had she been given the same opportunities as, say, Sung-woo and went to the Seoul National University, maybe she wouldn't even be in the Squid Game at all because she's just that smart. She's just lower class and didn't get that opportunity. So,
didn't get the opportunities.
You can't afford, like, lessons. You probably went to a poor school. Like, we've covered this before. It's just, like, you're stuck in this world. Another example I found interesting was in that same heartbreaking episode with the marbles. You all know which one I'm talking about. And Onyum is the old man who you love, the terminally ill, and he's rambunctious. And he calls his teammate and friend, Gi-hun, you know him, he calls him his Gungbu. And I'm sorry if I say it wrong. I can't speak Korean. And he explains when he calls him that this is like the name you give a friend and you would share your marbles, and like everything was each other's. And he explains that with this name, it means there's no yours or mine. And that there's no, he also says, like, in Korean, that there's no debt between Gungbu. Like, we're equal. We don't owe each other anything, which is different from, like, there's no yours or mine. It's that we're not indebted, which is like a big deal in a murder game where debt is the crux of everything. And in the translations, these lines are either mistranslated or omitted completely. They just didn't even say them. But with all that being said, Squid Game is fun and heartbreaking. You will laugh and you will cry, and you'll do that a bunch of times until you're honestly just crying at the end. Like, and then you just don't stop crying
After the
anymore.
marble episode, I cried until the end of the show.
Yeah.
And like in a very unexpected way because of what we find out at the end. Like the marble episode, I love, like, this sounds weird to say because I don't mean it how it's. I love old men.
Yeah.
Innocent, just like they're not babies, but like they are older and they need to be protected. And then to have that be what it was, the level of upset that I still am, just like daily I'll think about it and just be like, why? Why did they do that to me? Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
So sad.
You just start crying. You're just crying for forever. But I would say, like, believe the hype. Like, I think, like, if you can stomach it, because it can get really harsh, give it a watch if you're into something like this, because it does stand out from the other ones. Just make sure your subtitles are set to English subtitles and not English CC, the closed captioning, which translates the dub instead of translating the sub. So that's why they're like super off. Also fun fan theory that my sister and some other fans came up with was that if Gi-hun had chosen the pinkish red square in the slap game in the beginning, then with the Gong Yu, then maybe he would have been one of the pink folks who helped run the game.
Yeah, that checks out for me. Because they both seem like they were being subjugated in some way. Like they were not on equal playing ground as the guy with the fancy room and the mask. That wears all black.
But he was also like a pawn too. Yeah, he's trying. Like
he had won previous games, and I think because of that had been like entered into this kind of, you have to be in charge because you won one of the first games.
Yeah, but I think that's why I'm like, there's not enough time, because there's a whole other discussion to be had about the pink people, because they were also victims. Like, they're also struggling, and it's like a social experiment, because it reminded me of the Stanford prison experiment where you like give the prisoners, some of them are in charge and the other ones are the prisoners, and then it became this whole thing because they were abusing their power, because you do that. So like you could see, because sometimes they were murdered too, and they obviously had this like hierarchy, and the different shapes mean things. Like, if there were a second season, I would want it to be about the pink ones, so you can see that they were also, there's a whole thing. And that's why I was like, I think there's so much more depth to this than people are just giving, like, brushing it off and being like, whatever, it's a murder show, blah blah. And I get it, but you're wrong. It's a critical piece of media, and I could talk about it forever, but I'm significantly out of time and ate into Kat's time, and this is going to be a very long episode, and I apologize. So, Kat, it's your turn.
Yeah. I also think there's something that really can be said about the fact that when they get to the scene where the police officer who is like invading this space to like find his brother gets to that part where you have the tanks that are meant for people to like leave in an emergency, but they're not meant for the pink people. They are meant for like the elite guests and the off chance that something goes wrong. Not at all for the staff who are working for them. And I feel like that sent a very clear message that they were not there to be protected by the uppers. They even
shot one of them.
Yeah. I mean, that as well.
Little boy, he was a child.
Yes.
And when I saw him, I was like, is this their military service? Like, he somehow got into this or whatever. Like, that was where my mind went. But then it became clear that it's like,
that's not it. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're also like skeevy people, because they were like trying to sell organs, and they were also doing stuff to bodies they shouldn't be doing. Like, they're clearly not like they're not just, the elite at all.
They're not without these situations that societally have put them in this position. And I mean, the love of this show is unsurprising to me. As someone who has witnessed firsthand through living in America the depressing impacts of a failing capitalistic system and society, it makes sense why this is popular. It makes sense why it resonates both within South Korea as well as externally, like internationally, that there's lots of countries that like are fascinated with this concept in this show because it is relevant in other areas where capitalism is present. And honestly, being from a generation who has widely witnessed and fallen victim to the impacts of mass debt, which I'll get into in terms of how that is brought up within like South Korean society, as well as like low pay despite being highly educated, that just lets us either unable to afford housing, unable to afford our loans, unable to afford basic living needs. The message of Squid Games is like very deliberate and pointed. And it's interesting because South Korea has delivered some of our favorite capitalism critiques when we think Parasite, Snowpiercer, and they hold a special place in our hearts. And I think Squid Games, because of what it is trying to say in a lot of ways, will always hold a special place in our heart. And especially because it's a show instead of a movie, it was able to flesh out some things that otherwise might have needed to be rushed, which I think really lends well to the platform that it's in. But it's something that like I did not know about Korean society, but that, you know, it's really doing a good job showing the vast income disparities, the extensive debt, and how that impacts the society. And as capitalism generally is, the inspiration behind the show is pretty bleak in terms of what's happening. So fun fact coming to you from a Vox article titled "What Squid Games Fantasies and Harsh Realities Reveal About Korea," written by Asia Romaro. Netflix has seen a fantastic payoff from their decision to invest $500 million in Korean entertainment in 2021, which has resulted in a stock boom. So yay for them. The irony being that Squid Games is entirely about socio-economical divides, the exploitation of the poor by the rich, and the desperation of Korea's financial destitute class of laid-off workers. It's kind of ironic that Netflix is making a lot of money off of it.
They are the rich elite.
Yep.
In the masks.
Yep.
That's the American audience.
Yep. And I mean, honestly, with that information, hopefully with the giant magnifying glass zooming in on all the corruption and exploitation, as horror is often used as a catalyst for social change, hopefully that starts to take place through this understanding that it is necessary on a global scale. Hopefully capitalism just dies. That's my dream.
Same.
So hopefully that happens, and that the more media we see that kind of like fleshes this out in a way that's digestible, entertaining, and also like meaningful, that people, instead of just watching it to watch it with media analysis classes and use this as an opportunity to learn something and hopefully change the world, because it sucks. But something we see within the show does a great job of giving a less than subtle nod to class issues within South Korea, highlighting worker strikes and the violence done upon them by exploitative companies, a younger generation largely impacted by debt that leaves them financially incapable of taking care of their elders or themselves, the horrors of individuals under immigrant status face from exploitative companies within South Korea, and the societal pressures to thrive and attend expensive schools in hopes of reaching a higher income bracket, which I think is pretty like evident there with I think his name was Sung-woo. Yeah, his character kind of showcases like even if you get out of the income bracket that you are within, there's still so much risk, and like specifically if you're within this kind of everyone is in debt society, it becomes easier to take on more debt and take on more risks because you've already set a precedent for that.
Yeah, and you're also like you don't want to go back. You don't want to fall through. So you make more desperate and like risky actions to hold that place in society, and so then you're more victim to make those mistakes than to be stuck there. Yeah,
it's the matter of pride. And also the fact that he had his mom's business as collateral.
Yep.
Something that may be very relatable to Americans from the millennial and Z generations is the concept of mass debt. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of student loans and credit card debt because poverty. So that's super fun. I'm sure many can relate to that situation. Debt that is so high it keeps you from being able to afford housing or other basic needs. I have no resources to buy a home. You know what I mean? Like it's and previous
this economy.
Yeah, and like compared to previous generations that otherwise were able to achieve those things, that it was more so expectation of aging. Like you reach your 20s and mid to late 20s, you will have had a house. You will have started a family. That is not something that is readily available to people of our generations who have extensive amounts of money that they owe so that they cannot create a space for themselves to live happily. Yeah. As well as like signing loans for a degree that we were told as children would give us better access to jobs, but that has instead left us overqualified and under or unemployed. An article on NBC News titled "Squid Game is entertaining the world, but there's a different feeling in South Korea," written by Jennifer Kent and Stella Kim. It speaks on what this is like within South Korea. The article highlights the success that South Korea saw in the 1960s due to rapid industrialization that has made it one of the world's 10th largest economies. But in many other countries, a university degree and a white-collar job doesn't guarantee the financial security that it used to. So similar to like what we're dealing with here, they're dealing with there. With the average income of about $40,000 a year, many Koreans now find that they have to borrow in order to keep up. The influx of borrowing stem from low interest rates, which now has a household debt within South Korea equal to the country's annual GDP. Within the US, it's 80% of the annual GDP, but it's like it matches within South Korea. The cause of this debt development is multifaceted, but seems to stem from this precedent set with banks to begin the debt process. So if you think about like when you were going to college, if you go to college in America, you are immediately entered into this debt system. To like kind of conceptualize it with something that like people from America might understand. Similar to that, debt is something that is so commonplace within South Korea that it's once you enter into it, it becomes easier to kind of wrap your head around that kind of investment. And once you've taken out a loan just to afford life, it becomes like part of your income in a sense. The article highlights the housing market as one of the causes, stating that the average price of an apartment has come close to 1 million. I don't know what that translates to here, but and it's continuing to rise with most of the population already seeking loans to afford basic needs. Their subjugation under corporations is inevitable. They now need this money to pay back their loans, and because of that are more likely to become victims of unjust labor practices and exploitation, which is something that we see within the show with our main character as he's having like PTSD flashbacks to a raid where he was a part of a union and they are trying to like stand up against this exploitative company, and he lost somebody, like someone died, and like the violence that was done upon them by these corporations that were just trying to continue, but they were in these situations where they needed that money. There was no, they can't like just not have a job and then just sit. Like that's not an option because they owe. There's a debt there that makes it so that they no longer can make decisions that allow for their own personal growth because now they are responsible for. Yeah, exactly. And you can't move if you're within a hole. It also leaves them more vulnerable to loan sharks and other high interest institutions that further the subjugation. So the article goes on to highlight the high risk, high reward situations many young people, specifically in South Korea, are seeking to get out of this loop. So if you think like within America, lottery tickets, using Robinhood, trying to like spend money to make money in a way that is high risk, but also would be high reward, would exit you out of this situation. But the problem with that is that if you're taking high risks, you could have a very negative impact from that. So specifically taking out loans to invest in cryptocurrency or gambling. If we think about the first episode, you have our main character, he's dealing with like he has bet all the money that he got for his daughter's birthday on horses. Because that's not like something that's like so out there within like it. Betting on gambling and cryptocurrency is like seen as a way out of this financial struggle. But tying back to the article, when you look at the characters in the show who are participating in this game, they represent the demographic of Koreans who are in the worst possible situation because of their personal debt. Koo Si-woong, a commentator on Korean culture based in Germany, said, "The story stems from a deeply rooted perception of how society looks at failure, especially individual financial failure. The fear of failure pushes many away from seeking bankruptcy and instead pushes them towards more risky solutions. As Gabe was saying, like pride is a big element of this. To commit or to declare bankruptcy is worse than dying. Like societally, it basically like scars your name, stars your family's name, and is not seen as something that's like safe to do. It's not a new beginning. It is like you have ended your entire adulthood. Like it is done now. So it's safer in these instances to bet on more risky things than just declaring bankruptcy, like in terms of like culturally. And it pushes people further towards the risk of having to take out these second tier lenders instead of like being at a bank, going to like loan sharks that can lead them down this path that we saw in a lot of the characters within Squid Game walking down. In fact, the article states that approximately 400,000 Koreans are in debt to loan sharks specifically, a number that could very well be higher if you're calculating like second tier lenders, which are ones with higher interest rates than if you were to go to a bank. So it's essentially people digging deeper and deeper holes for themselves that are nearly impossible to get out of. Comparing this to like my upbringing is deeply rooted in this fear surrounding failure for like our entire generation. Having an entire generation so scared of failure that it gives out participation trophies. And something that many Americans, specifically millennials and the Z generation, can relate to, adults who are in their care being so scared of seeing their children experience failure that they remove all the safe ways to do so from all areas of their education. And within competition, when as a society, you don't allow failure, you don't allow like a bounce back. Once you fail, you're done. And that's not something that's going to allow for survival as well as success. It kind of further fuels this desire for quick fixes because the process of failing is just so incomprehensible. In South Korea, as I was saying, bankruptcy is seen as a devastating fate. In the show, we get this kind of highlight into that when a contestant is given the option to leave and instead chooses to go back. And it's in the regular world, it's not just the death of their body, it's the death of their pride. It's the shame of having to be seen as such an unsuccessful person in front of your family. And we kind of like get this window into that, and it's like really sad and relatable in a lot of ways. Like this kind of the way in which money rules the lives of so many just through the existence of capitalism, and like that it's not there to actually provide people with the things that they need. That's why within Squid Games, you have so many characters who are forced to be cruel when otherwise they maybe wouldn't have been. Because that is the only way you're going to make it in a system that is meant to set you up to step on the heads of others to succeed. And essentially, it's like there's people, another quote from the article, Margie Kim, a housewife in Seoul who was watching Squid Games with her family, said, "I really feel the pain of what our society is going through." She said the show deals with so many pressing issues, income inequality, youth unemployment, a rapidly aging society, that it's something her entire family can relate to and talk about. So many middle-class, ordinary people live with so much debt, and she could totally empathize with the people who joined the game. And I think that's arguably one of the reasons why it's so popular in America as well, is that other than just being like a fun murder game show, a lot of people can resonate with the need to enter something like that. That the bleakness of their day-to-day life is high enough that it is impacting their like livelihood and their survival. Like they can't afford the things that they need to take care of themselves or others because the system in and of itself is setting them up to like have to be cruel in order to get those things.
Yeah, and the game like is also culling the herd, right? It's like these people are not going to amount to anything anyway, so we don't feel bad about them dying. Like you're doing a benefit to the rest of Korea by removing them as like people who are indebted. Like they just disappear, that's it now. And maybe there's a insurance policy and now their family can be better than if they were alive, right?
Yeah.
And it's I think like the fact that they chose to go back, like that's such a big thing. In like what that person said in the article is like, I could totally empathize with them joining the game, because it's one thing if you're just plopped into a game and you think like, I have no way out, like physically, so I have to fight to survive. But this was like, I have no way out financially in the real world, so I have to fight to survive, which gives us this whole other level of like, would you do that? Is life that hard for you? Like,
well, if you think of like all the like what if scenarios that kind of pop up where it's like, for how much money would you do this horrible thing? Because arguably within the system that we exist within has made it essential to have money, and that money is the thing we need to solve all of our problems that should not exist in the first place. But that's not like, people don't always like critically think and think like, hey, maybe the problem is that actually this system shouldn't exist at all. But instead, we need to figure out a way to exist within the system because there's no stopping it, which isn't true. But it does seem like when you keep a population, as we talked about in previous episodes, so distracted that they don't have time, energy, other resources to question things, then you're forced to be in situations where the idea of entering a game where you might die would be worth it. We're entering a game into why the time you leave, you are not a good person anymore would be worth it. Sacrificing your humanity, your kindness, and even just like really thinking about like the populations that they arguably a lot of them were just regular people who have been put into this situation. I think like the main character specifically, you have like this backstory for him. And it's very relatable. Like, yes, he is like a sweet, kind of simple guy, but like he did everything arguably right up until the point where he was let go from a job that did not value him. For no fault of his own. Yeah. For no fault of his own. And then was, because of the fact that he has been entered into this debt system, was unable to recover from that and was forced into trying to work his way out in any means possible, and thus negatively impact every area of his life, his ability to take care of his mom, his ability to be a good father, because he was just so hurt by like actively this entire system that was made to hurt him. And he was just so arguably dispensable by the people who are in charge of the government and everything else that give these corporations the means to do this. That society as a whole is viewing him that way as well, because like we have been so trained to just be like, as you were saying, Gabe, like they're like, it'd be better if they were gone, which isn't true. It shouldn't be true. It shouldn't be true.
People like, you're better. The world is better because you're in it, and like trying to convince people otherwise is the problem. And I think what's interesting about this show is that we get to see all these different ways that debt and like just these financial situations can contribute to them making these risky decisions. But also like that, like some characters were just honestly good, right? Like Ali is just good. He's just a good guy.
Good guy, bad situation.
Yeah. But I think like even some of the otherwise labeled as villains or the characters that get hated on, like Sang-woo, I think like I didn't hate him. I got it. I was like, he's the one, and he even says it, like, you're lucky that you have someone on your side who is going to fight, who's going to do what needs to get done. Like, I'm sorry, but like, he's had to do that. Like, he's had to put away that part of him that would feel bad to survive. And the same thing, with Minyo. Like, she's just trying to survive. She has whatever it takes, whatever she can do, and I get it. I would say the only one I didn't care for was Deok-soo, which was like the loan shark dude, like the mobster kind of guy. Because he didn't like there was no part like he did bad things too, and like but we didn't get enough of why he was
there
in the
wasn't
situation.
fleshing out of his reasoning. Or even like what was his motivation for being there. We got the idea that if he left, he had done bad within his mob situation, so he would be murdered anyway.
Yeah.
But you don't really get like how he got into that position in the first place.
Yeah, like why he was making those risky decisions.
Yeah, and I agree totally. Like he was from the get-go put into this situation where like he had to either fly, and when he couldn't do that because of like what society was like, he didn't start that way, you know what I mean? He was a kid. And he had all this pressure from his family and other, like he's the one who got out, and he was supposed to like just fly and do great things, and it's like, you're a human at the end of the day. He's just trying to survive.
And he has that entire group of people like on his shoulders looking at him. Like if you can make it out, then you're giving hope to everyone else. And as someone who's like first gen, go to college, like to do like have a career from a degree that you did, like that's like unheard of in my life. Like in where so there's a lot of pressure that was on me to the point where like that's why I got student loan debt. I had no idea. No one was able to tell me what it was like and what to do and what not to do. All I knew was I had to do that, and there was no other like people are like, you could go to college or you could go, do something else. I'm like, something else?
Yeah.
Like, no one ever told me there was another option. And so that's how we end up where we are. And so I totally related to like that, like where he was, and that he felt bad too. Like he had some really like it devastated him what he had to do.
Yeah.
But like what else was the other option was that he doesn't.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately he's been put in this situation where it is required for him to survive. He has to be the bad guy. He has to step on other people to push himself up. That has been that's something societally that people are rewarded for all the time. It's like, oh, you're a business person. You don't pay your workers a livable wage, but you're so successful. Look at your nice house. You know what I mean? Like it's set up within capitalism that the way to succeed is to step on others. And if that's something that you're rewarded for, if people clap for you and say how wonderful you are, how wonderful your life is, your mom must be so proud. You know what I mean? Like she brags about him, and it's like recognize, like as she's proud of her son, but like it's like he is put in a position where his understanding of what is right and wrong as well has been like significantly skewed throughout his entire life, because he's been encouraged to take risks and step on others to get higher.
He can't fail.
He's not allowed.
He absolutely cannot fail.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of layers to it.
Because you want to, like, you want people to know that it's okay to fail and that we can get back up. But, like, that, it's just, like, we can't even talk about it, so we can't know that you're in trouble, so we can't help you out of trouble, because you're not allowed to talk about it. So, and that's, like, a cultural thing, and it's something we can definitely understand over here as well. And I do hope that we get people who look at Squid Game outside of just like, okay, it's gory and fun and like heartbreaking and murder games, whatever, and actually look at it for the capitalism critique that it is, and like that same emotion and how sad you feel and how like riled up you feel, like turn that over and aim it towards not letting something like Squid Game become real. Like I know it's not, like it's super preposterous, but like the premise of rich people harming lower income bodies for just cause
it's something that happens now.
Fictional.
That's not that's not fictional. That happens every day every day of our existence. A version of the Squid Games in a less gory and brutal way has the equal result of people dying, being hurt, or otherwise like unable to survive because of these systems.
And it's also like even just thinking of like the aesthetics of it, like using these bright colors and like using kids games, like there's this illusion that it's fine. Like there's like this like facade of like, this is just a game. It's a kid's game. Of course you can get out. It's totally equal.
But the cost
like,
is death. Yeah.
But it's just a distraction. Like you see that and you think like, oh, this is what?
That's so legit.
This is goofy, you
100%.
know? And then it's like, no, it's actually terrifying. Like Facebook, you can go ahead and change your name to Meta. Like, go ahead. You're still Facebook. Like, you're still a problem. You're still surveying people and giving and selling their information. Like, no. Like, you're still a problem. Changing the name isn't going to change anything. So,
it's just making it look nicer.
Yeah,
so that because it's something that's already acceptable in its bright, fun packaging, but is inherently disgusting and horrible and evil.
Yep. Well, yeah. So that was our super long episode of Squid Games. I knew it could, like, and there's like, as you were talking, I was like, and then there's another thing.
Yeah.
Like,
we'll have to talk about it again. Like, I know we're going to talk about murder games for this entire month, but we'll have to come back to Squid Games, I think. Because one, if there's a season 2, but also just because there's like so much that can be said about the dynamic at play. Yeah. Like, how in the world would we be able to cover the complexities of capitalism and Korean culture within even an hour and a half?
Yeah, we could have a whole series about that, because there's so much media out there that you really, like, every single thing that Bong Joon-ho has made is some kind of statement. Like, whether it's about, like, environmentalism or capitalism or just, like, people need to be better people into our planet. Sure. Kingdom, like I said, like, that's a whole thing about classism. Like, there's so much. And, like, even stepping away, there's, like, other cultures who are doing the same thing, and we just need to, like, pay attention to them. Yeah. And I knew I was like, this episode can be forever, because I wrote like an entire book, and I was like, and this isn't even everything. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope, like, you know, it's not killjoys, because you're enjoying it, but you're also learning. And that's the whole point of really good media, is that you can enjoy something and also learn something while you're doing that.
Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. We're not like crapping on it. We're like, no, this is like this idea. So cool. This is like, learn from it. Don't just be like, haha, fun little pretty color box time, happy games.
Don't be the
pink. Learn from don't go to a Great Gatsby party dressed as rich people. Murder the rich people.
Yes.
Redistribute the wealth to everybody else. We don't condone murder at the Ghouls. We don't.
We don't.
Okay, don't murder them, but take all their money.
But let's take it from them, and let's
take all of their money and redistribute it.
They don't need it. What are they going to do?
Solve hunger.
They're going to die. Solve hunger before they ever spend
solve housing inequities. Actually educate human beings.
Value
life.
Collar jobs, and value workers. If they're essential, pay them an essential salary, and don't be surprised that no one wants to work for $10 an hour anymore, because it's 2020, and that's preposterous.
Unskilled labor doesn't exist. If there's labor.
Yeah, it's skilled.
It's all skilled.
Someone's got to do it. Rude. Anyway, so many things we have to say. I hope you enjoy this series, because it's going to be a lot of this, but also fun, and hopefully we turn you on to some pretty interesting series or films about games and that are also educating and murdery at the same time, because it's like two of our favorite things. So don't get married.
Delete your kids. Counter offer. Burn all the money. Money doesn't exist anymore. We don't have a system where money is necessary, and we just exchange goods and services for like actions.
Yeah, or other goods and services.
Exactly.
Like you do a thing, and I do a thing, and now we can swap. So now you have the thing that I do.
Yeah.
And
we don't need money. That's the secret. The secret is we don't need currency or money. We just need to not be horrible people.
Scarcity is a myth.
Yeah.
So there's plenty to go around.
We just need to give people what they need. Also, start shoplifting and dumpster diving. Do it. They waste so much. Here we are.
Yeah, that's like in our Buy Nothing group when we lived right on the outskirts of like some of the gentrified areas. And
people giving away
like super expensive stuff. We'd be like,
Roombas,
yeah, I'll take it.
Nice
Shame
things.
I don't know the word.
Right.
Pride,
like,
no, thank you.
I just need things to survive, and they should not be behind a paywall.
Yeah. But yeah. So
That's all. That's my rant.
make
I'm
sure you
done.
like and subscribe. Check out the rest of the series. We're looking forward to it. Let us know what you think about Squid Game. And if there are anything that we left out and you're like, I would love an episode 2 where you did this, like,
Yeah, we
sign us up.
covered Midsummer twice. Let's go.
Yeah, we did Midsommar twice. We did something else twice before.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm going. I'm
Let's do
ready
it
for
again.
it. Let's do it. It's just so good. And very sad.
Yeah. Actual
yeah.
buy.
Yeah, for real, bye now.